It is an absolute pleasure to have you with us for the second episode of our podcast series. I hope you're able to hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Um, so, yeah. From scientific insight to market validation, empowering early stage healthcare brands. This platform is envisioned as a meeting ground where rigorous science converses with real world markets and where early stage healthcare innovations find clarity, direction, and purpose. Now, allow me to briefly introduce myself. I'm Prerna Kaul, an active member of PharmiVon and your host for today's session. It is truly an honor to facilitate conversations that actually matter, especially those that shape the future of healthcare, wellness, and innovation. So, this podcast is proudly brought to you by PharmiVon Media. PharmiVon Media is a digital healthcare and life sciences media platform which is dedicated to bridging the gap between education, research, and industry. Through thoughtfully curated podcasts, educational initiatives, and industry focused engagements, we strive to empower healthcare and pharmaceutical professionals with practical insights, real world exposure, and meaningful global connections. So today we are privileged, highly privileged, I must say, to be joined by an extraordinary leader and visionary. It is my great honor to welcome Ms. Sana Mujawar ma'am, founder of Quick Research Pro, Healthcare and Wellness Market, and our esteemed guest for this episode. Ma'am has been at the forefront of translating complex scientific ideas into actionable market ready strategies, guiding healthcare brands through the often daunting journey from innovation to impact. Ma'am, it is truly a pleasure to have you with us today. So, to begin this on a very lighter note and a more personal note, what was the first thing that inspired you to work at the intersection of science and healthcare innovation?
Okay. First of all, thank you, Prerna, for such a beautiful introduction. Um, for this, when after completing my graduation in pharmacy, I first my first thought was to take up a job like fresh graduates, and over a time, I realized that business is quite interesting. So even initially, I wanted to start my own skincare brand. So while working on that idea, I was, researching everything like ingredient, formulation, concept, what actually customer want, and packaging, labeling. So many things I was doing on my own. And at some point, I realized that doing everything alone is not sustainable, especially at early stage as a early stage brand. So that phase made me realize that doing everything alone is not possible, as well as that made me to rethink about my direction. So what stood out for me was like how many good ideas, business ideas fail, not because of lack of potential, but because founders don't have access to affordable research and structured research proper, and that realization become a foundation for the Quick Research Pro. So I wanted to create a way for where small skincare, wellness, and healthcare brands get could get like affordable research rather than going towards the traditional consultancies and spending lots of amount there. So that actually made me to work on the intersection of science and healthcare innovation.
Ma'am, that's truly inspiring to hear, such beautiful and such golden words from you. So, what I was thinking when I was reading about this, when you hear the phrase scientific insight to market validation. So I just wanted to know what is your, meaningful purpose on what exactly scientific insight market validation is for you.
For me, scientific, insights is something like a foundation for the skincare and healthcare brands. When you have to work on everything you need to know about the ingredient, like how it will work and it will fit into the formulation or not. That needs scientific data. So the scientific insight is a foundation, definitely a foundation for the skincare brands. And when you create scientific data properly, uh, the your product will become, you know, like it will automatically fit into the market because it is made upon on a purpose, not on a assumptions. So, and for market validations, for me is like something you, if you done science in a right way, market will accept it organically, originally, So, in short, scientific insight gives you the it it actually proves that your product actually works, and market validation uh, ensure that your product is actually working. And I think this is enough for this answer.
Yes, ma'am. It truly, I think all the viewers who will be watching this further, I think it will give a very certified clarification on what exactly scientific insights to market validation is. So, in your experience to go further, what is the biggest misconception early stage healthcare founders have, commercialized about?
I think I when I see as a misconception, I think many people, many founders think that commercialization means simply following the trend. What founders can do that they can simply find a trending ingredient and then they will change something into the already existed formulation and they think it will work. But what brand actually means, whatever you can do your original, you can't just follow the trending ingredients and making slight changes. This is not called as a brand. I and people founders may actually thinks like that following a trend means having making your brand, you know on a big platform. Commercialization is simply commercialization means having creating your own original products and gaining the customer trust. These simple things make you happen the commercialization in a good way.
So, since being a big part of being under the umbrella of science, I think translating science into value is the main purpose of all of this entire thing. So, after many breakthroughs, innovations which originate in laboratories, what are the key steps that you think which is required to convert raw scientific data into a value proposition that investors and markets truly understand?
A raw material will becomes meaningful when it actually work in a real world application. So the first key step should be understanding ingredient deeply, like everything about ingredient, about its solubility, it will fit into the solvent or not, everything about the scientific insight of a particular ingredient. So this is the first key step. You get the all the data about a particular ingredient. And next key step is market relevance, where when you have to ask about what how it will work into the market. Is this ingredient is already into the market or not? how many brands are using the same ingredients. So this will give a lots of data, and this raw data gives you space to find out whether you can create something new and different from other than other brands. And I think this can add strong value and proposition. So having scientific data as well as uh, finding out the market, how will it will work into the market. I think this data will help investor and market to understand not only science but uh, you know how it will your opportunities and everything.
So, ma'am, as you mentioned about materials, about ingredients moving forward into the market, so how much evidence is actually enough to move forward in the market without failing and falling into this trap of over engineering validation?
In early stage brands, I think it is totally depend upon what product you are going to make. If for example you are creating a lip oil that requires some oil based tint color, so that is some basic ingredients, and you just need some basic scientific data, safety understanding. That is, I think that is sufficient to move forward. But if you are selecting an ingredient which is contains claims, therapeutic claims or high risk, you should go for the clinical trials and more clinical data, like you said, more validation. So it is totally depend upon the product, which product you are going to make. So I think over validation during early stage will slow down your innovations. So I think enough data is having some scientific insights are maybe enough for the early stage brands.
So, ma'am, if we talk about this, then there's a very core point which is required in this, and which can be the protagonist of this entire marketing thing. So, what role does this clinical relevance versus scientific novelty play in determining the real market success?
I really don't see it is as a clinical relevance versus scientific novelty, because both are equally important while you are creating a product. You must go for the clinical relevance as well as scientific novelty. As I said, it is totally depend upon which ingredient you choose for the product. If it contains high risk therapeutic claims, you must go for the clinical relevance to create a credit into the market and building a trust into the customers. And other hand, scientific novelty will help you to create a lifestyle product which requires different formulations and creativity. So using this both in a right balance, I think will make brand more successful.
So, ma'am, what are the most, like, because there are so many youngsters which are, coming now into this entire category. So, what are the most common mistakes that healthcare startups make while validating their market?
In healthcare industry, I think founders enter into the crowded market, like they will select one product which is already into the market. Like in healthcare, like you can see so many supplement products like vitamin C tablets and other generic supplements, and which these are already into the market by different brands. So entering into the same category, I think is something that is a big mistake from the healthcare. And I think they should need to be innovate something that is really useful in daily life, like creating juices, like like beetroot juice. Many people's for healthcare, they go for the beetroot juice, they create fresh juice at home. And I think this is something like uh, healthcare brand should make to make some people's life easy. So innovation is something important in healthcare industry, and another one is not going through the crowded categories.
Ma'am, this is actually what we see in our entire generation. Like, if we talk about today's time, so what we see is that everyone follows this one single trend which is already going on. And as you said, it is so rightly said, because I have always seen so many of my peers walking into the same group which is already, in the market. So even I think that something which is truly exceptional, something which is truly inclusive, and something which is truly out of the box can only make your startup work. So, how early should founders begin incorporating regulatory, HEOR, or market access perspectives into their validation strategy?
I think they should go for the regulatory and health economics and outcome report and market access as soon as early as possible, because this is not something which is last step activity. So when you decide where when you decide what you are going to make, like formulation and everything about the product, you must go for the regulations, alignments, because this is something which make you more safe and feel so, sorry for.
No problem.
So this will make you feel safe into the market, and people will easily trust at you because you did everything on depending upon regulations, having proper license and labeling. So this will create a trust into the customers, I think. So people must founders must go for the regulations as early as possible.
So, ma'am, could you please share an example with us where early market validation significantly altered or refined the productive, direction? Any of the example, your example or anyone's example.
Not an example, but I can share you a common scenario. Imagine a founder selected an ingredient which is quite sensitive, that requires licensing or clinical trials. So when you do early validation, you have to do this all the things, right? So you make it in a that way, so you don't have to fear when your product launches. you know it will make you feel confidence instead of fear. So this will definitely, when you totally prepared, so you don't need have to fear about anything, either customers and regulatory authorities. You will launch your product with full confidence and not fear.
So, ma'am, if you talk about fear, so it always relates to empowering. So, what are the the non-negotiable pillars that every early stage healthcare brand must focus on to empower its own brand, a healthcare brand?
I think the first one is ingredient integrity, because in India is a fortunate to have Ayurvedic and herbal product, ingredients which are culturally accepted and locally available. Many of them are locally available. So you should go for the products which are already available in India, like Ayurvedic and herbal, which have many more functions. And second one is meaningful innovations. In today's generation is attracted towards K beauty. So I think creating something like using our Indian ingredients and making something your original products more better than K beauty. I think this will something make uh, founders should focus on these kind of things. And third pillar may be market relevance and trust. Just following trend will not make your brand succeed. So you have to focus on creating original products and building trust into the customers.
So if we talk about the pillars, so it is very related to, I think, the budgets, because whenever we think about startups, the one thing that comes into the mind, which is very forefronted and which is very straightforward, right, to when we start thinking about startups, is about budgets. Many people think that you will have to invest a lot, you will have to drive into this a lot with money, with services for the employees or anything. So for startups operating with limited budgets, how can they still conduct credible and defensible market validation?
Limited budget don't mean limited validation. You can still go for the lots of things, like you can easily search ingredient, biological background, about the formulation, testing. Everything is available online. It doesn't need lots of investment. You can, and this alone, scientific, this all scientific data alone solve so many problems. Then comes formulations. You can easily find out through the journals and many sources. So this also doesn't need much more investment. And third one is what founders overspend on is packaging material. So as an early stage brand, you should go for the simple packaging, not for the fancy packaging. This will cost a lot. So go for the simple packaging. So, and finally you can hire a micro research partner who can solve your research problems easily, and it is affordable.
So, I think in today's ecosystem, how vital is the storytelling, backed by strong signs for building lasting brand trust? Because what we have seen since so long is, whenever we talk about a brand, we talk about its backstory, about how much trust do we have, how much they have put in it, put in their efforts into the brand. So, in today's ecosystem, does it actually, last for the brand trust?
So I think you can't hide anything from today's generation. You can't hide anything from peoples, because they can, if they have any question, they can simply search on internet and get the answer. So storytelling is important to create a transparency and trust into the customers. So storytelling, which is backed by science, it is very important to building a trust into the customers. And trust is something which is the foundation of a particular brand. And if you start telling people why you are selected a particular ingredient, and why you selected this, and what their uses and everything, this will create a trust and transparency. So I think storytelling is important in today's generation, especially.
So, like talking about today's generation, it is completely AI driven. So, how do you see AI, real world experience, and digital health data reshaping early stage validation in healthcare?
Yes, absolutely. AI and uh, early everything that is available online is definitely reshaping the brand. You can easily find out any free kind of tools which you can create a flyer, advertising, content. That is so easy. You don't need a big market team to promote your product. So AI really helps you to create, especially for early stage brands, create a content. Then real world evidence that help you to find out the ingredients, background and everything. So overall, these all kind of things helps reduce guesswork.
So if we talk about all of this, I think all of us, are excited to follow the trends. So which healthcare innovation trends excites you the most over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it is about AI assisted diagnostics, machines. Well, I look forward for the machines that will help customers to find out their skincare problems and suggest them something which will solve their health skincare problems. So this kind of machine not only solve the customers problem, but it will produce lots of data for the brands. Using that data, brand can create something, product like that will solve customers problem. So I think this kind of machines, AI driven machines, I'm looking forward for in 3 to 5 years.
And what skills and mindsets should future healthcare entrepreneurs start cultivating today? Like in your perspective, on your perspective,
What? Sorry.
what skills and mindsets should future healthcare entrepreneurs start cultivating today? Like, as in your sense, what is your perspective on this?
I think the first skill should be understanding the fundamental of pharmaceutics, which we learned into the first or second year of the pharmacy. And second one, staying up to date about the regulations, because they change every time. So staying up to date and having AI knowledge is something very important in important. This is definitely help you to create content and create advertising and so many things. AI will help you. And I think some another one skill is data analysis, which will help you to understand the market. And this overall continuous learning is a very important skill. I think this one is very important.
So, I think we have had a good set of very important questions and a very correlated questions that I hope and I know all the viewers will connect to. I think now we should go for a very quick rapid fire round because that is very trendy nowadays. So we'll go with the first one. We'll just keep it very casual and very quick. So one word to describe today's healthcare startup ecosystem.
I think crowded.
Okay. Science or strategy, if you had to choose one.
Science.
Science. Okay. Then I think you and I should have choose science. So, one book, podcast, or resource you recommend for healthcare founders.
Google Scholar. This will definitely help
Hmm.
early stage brands in a very high level.
And yes. And the biggest red flag you notice in the early stage pitches.
Copying.
Copying. Yes. And I think even plagiarism with all the AI stuff which is going on. So, okay. One piece of advice you wish you had received earlier in your career.
Patience.
Patience is the key. Okay. Okay. It was truly wonderful to have such a good and such an interactive session with you. So before we conclude this session, what would be your one golden piece of advice to early stage healthcare brands striving to move from insight to real world impact?
My piece of advice would be, you should have patience. Create your own original product. Just don't copy trend and making slide changes will not work. create your own original product. And second one is, doing this is something, takes lots of patience, so stay calm and have patience. And third one is, you should keep learning and read newsletters, read in industry insights and everything. Just stay up to date. You should know everything about what going on into the market. So I think this piece of advice I wanted to give to the brands.
So if we just make it short, it is all about staying consistent. It is all about having patience, and it is all about staying up to date to whatever is happening in the world of pharmacy, in the world of healthcare. So it has been truly wonderful, ma'am, to have you today. Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable wisdom, life experience, and strategic clarity with us today. Your insights will undoubtedly resonate with the founders, researchers, and innovators navigating the complex yet rewarding healthcare landscape. And to our viewers, thank you for being a part of this journey. Do stay tuned for our third episode where we continue to decode the pathways that transform ideas into impact. I'm
Thank
Prerna
you.
Kaul, and this is PharmiVon Media. I'm signing off. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
PharmiVon Media, your voice in pharma and healthcare media.